Welcome to the Burger Garden. Well, the beginning of the Burger Garden. So with the help of my amazing wife and her incredible abilities of growing plants, veggies, herbs, flowers, all sorts of things, you name it, we've partnered up with Vego Gardening to bring you a garden to grill series of videos. And it's gonna be a ton of videos on growing our own food, our own herbs, our own veggies, and there will be some flowers in there, of course, too. My wife and I have always loved gardening, digging in the dirt, being outside together. That's one of the things that we love the most. And that's really how we love to spend our time together. And now that our two small girls are reaching that toddler age where they can really understand our overall impact on our surroundings and the environment, it's even more important now that we teach them how to grow our own food and why we want to grow our own food so that they have that to grow up with, and that we make our own food as much as humanly possible, right? That's really important to us anyway. So my wife helped me design what we are calling our dream raised garden bed setup, so that together we can help show you, maybe you don't know, maybe you do know, how to grow your own food at your house or apartment or living space. Now, what I'm about to show you is a really large garden space, really large. The best thing about raised garden beds, at least I think so, is that you can pretty much get them any size and shape to fit wherever you live, whether you live in an apartment building or a high rise or things like that, or if you live out in the country. Raised garden beds are an incredible way, especially if you don't have great soil. For instance, we have a lot of clay and a lot of sand. It's different throughout the entire property. So with those kind of changes, a raised garden bed is a great way to provide a really nice growing environment that you can really have an impact on and really kind of control. Now, Vego offers so many different colors, sizes, shapes, styles, that maybe if you live in an apartment building and you have a balcony, they have many different sizes and shapes that could fit on your balcony to grow your own food outside on your balcony. Or even if you don't have a balcony, they've got self-watering herb planters that you can keep in your kitchen near a window. Or, which something that I really think is a super cool movement, people in large cities across the world are building urban gardens on their rooftops with raised garden beds. Super cool. Now, I would consult with your landlord before you start throwing a bunch of dirt in some raised garden beds on your big apartment building roof. But the point is, you can really grow your vegetables and your herbs anywhere, is what I'm trying to say. And we're gonna show you exactly how. So we used Vego's 3D modeling software on their website to generate what we wanted as a design and size, which my wife wants me to absolutely tell you was definitely inspired by one of the garden channels that she's been following for years and years and years, Garden Answer. Another great YouTube channel that we both really love to watch that has a ton of great growing advice and knowledge is Epic Gardening. And they really specialize in raised garden beds as well. So check them out too. Okay, so let me tell you about this space that we decided to put our raised garden bed in. Our property is really wooded on two of the sides, behind the house and the south side of the house. And where we live is, in garden speak, is zone 6. And our summer sun will travel kind of like this. It'll rise over there and then it'll come over the trees behind the house, and then for the rest of the day, kind of go like this right over the lake. Really pretty sunsets, Lake Erie. And that will give us approximately 8 to 11 hours of full sun every single day during the summer months. So that's why we chose to put our raised garden bed setup here. Now, that sunlight will definitely change in the fall and winter, but we've got plans for that because the crops also change for the fall and winter. So we'll definitely have those videos later on in the season as well, so you can see how we'll adapt what we're growing for that changing sun. Now, the space we're putting all the beds in is about 52 feet long and 20 feet wide. Now, we're actually shifting this space down a little bit to get a little further away from the house and a little bit more on the flat side of things. It's not super flat, it's really hilly, so we will have to do a little bit of leveling on the garden beds, but not so bad. What we're going to do is get a sod lifter, rip up all this grass. I know, it's a ton of grass, but I've got lots of places to put it on the property, so it will go to use, even though 60% of it is dandelions. Whatever, topic for another discussion. So far we've built 3 beds, only 9 more to go. No big deal. They are actually super easy to build. It just takes some time to build each of them. We've got 4 of these L-shaped ones, and you definitely want to have a buddy help you move those around. They're not heavy, they're just kind of awkward and you don't want them to break. So either build them in the space where you're gonna keep them, or build them and move them with a buddy. We have this one gigantic one, which is called a 10-in-1. And one of the cool things about the Vego garden beds is you can do a bunch of different shapes and sizes out of one bed. So they have the 10 in 1, which we have one in the center, and then we'll have 4 L shapes around it, which are all 7 feet long on each side, each side of the L. And that will make a nice square with a nice raised planter on the inside. And we'll have a nice visual, a vertical thing coming out of it. My wife calls them obelisks. Just a funny way of saying obelisk. And that will create a vertical presence in the center of the garden. But then we also have 4 of their 9 in 1s that'll be more of a skinny rectangle. And those will go on each side, 2 on each side. And then at the beginning of the garden space and at the back of the garden space will be 2 of the kid-size planters, and those will be connected with 1.5-foot trellises on each side. So you'll be able to walk through that trellis on the front and the back of the garden, and we'll be growing Colette climbing roses over them. So it'll just be gorgeous to walk into your vegetable garden, walking through a beautiful set of just gorgeous climbing roses. And that was all my wife's design and how she planned it out, what she's always envisioned as like a dream garden space. So for the very first time on this channel, I finally get to introduce you to my amazing, amazing wife, Carly. And she's going to tell you about all that we're growing, how she started almost all of it from seed. Vego Garden did send some seedlings of some things they wanted us to grow and try out and compare to what we're growing from seed. How they're growing, some failures along the way. Yeah, that happens. Things don't always grow right. So without further ado, here's my wife, Carly.
Hi guys. I thought we would just take you on a nice little tour of all the seedlings that we've started this year. The first thing you need to know when you're considering starting your seeds indoors in the wintertime is your first frost date. And that is depending on where you're living. And for us, we're in zone 6. And that puts us at a May 2nd first frost date. So some seedlings you can start 10 to 12 weeks before your frost date. A lot are 6 to 8, and then kind of like a 3 to 4 weeks before your first frost date. So we succession sowed seeds all winter, which really is a nice way to get excited for spring. One of the first things that we did start 10 to 12 weeks before our first frost date, I started some dahlia tubers and some pansies. And way too soon to start dahlias, but I got way too excited. But look at how beautiful the blooms are. So these guys are already blooming. They'll go in pots, and they were from tubers that I had saved from last year. The other thing we started early were all these pansies. And so just to give you reference, these were last year's pansies that I put in the ground here. And I liked the effect of them kind of popping through this lamb's ear that we started a whole bunch new ones. And we already put those in the ground. They're really cold tolerant. I did start some bleeding hearts from roots, and they're doing really well. They'll go on our north side in a protected area. And we got some strawberries for our raised bed. So our local county provides bare roots, trees, shrubs, edibles for a really discounted price. A lot of them are natives. So we got some bare root trees to put in our woods, and then 10 strawberries. Here's another flower I'll highlight because we've got some blooms on this one. So I started a lot of agastache. I did one last year and loved it so much. This is called Arizona Sunset from Park Seed, and it is gorgeous. It starts off this like beautiful peachy orange, and then it kind of goes to pink, and then this beautiful purple. All right. And here's a few more plants for our raised beds. We're starting 2 different types of broccoli, Brussels sprouts, green onions. Some other things that we're planning to put in our raised beds are tomatoes, peppers. So they're still downstairs. They're a little bit more delicate, so I'm waiting a few more days until I bring them upstairs. Although when we do, we're gonna plant 2 of them up in the Vego self-watering rolling patio tomato planters. They have cages built right into the planter itself. And we're gonna put 2 sun gold tomato plants in those. One they sent us and one that we started in our basement. Just as a little experiment to see the difference between a professional grower and a novice in our basement growing. Like, what's the difference that you get in produce? So that'll be interesting to follow along the whole growing season. Sun gold tomatoes are delicious, tiny cherry tomato. They're yellow, super delicious. Great to grow if you have kids. Okay, we've got several different tomatoes that we're growing too, a couple beefsteak varieties, a couple slicers. We've got some Brandywine. We've got a Brandywine red that we grew, and Vego also sent us out a Brandywine pink So I'm excited to see the difference between those two tomatoes as well. We started downstairs shishito peppers and poblano peppers, and Vego sent us out a Big Bertha bell pepper. Vego also sent us a Black Beauty eggplant, a nasturtium plant, and some other herbs that you'll see us pot up in a separate video, a self-watering herb planter for your kitchen. Okay, a little bit more on our herb front. Some will go in the bed, some will go in pots, kind of just in our raised bed area. Because things like mint, spearmint, those get very aggressive. You never want to put those in a raised bed situation or in the ground. They'll just take over the world. So we'll pot those up in pots and just kind of stick them around our garden area. The other thing that I'm gonna put into a pot that I've never grown before, I'm really excited about, is Korean perilla. I had spent some time living abroad in South Korea, and oftentimes with Korean barbecue, they'll serve the pork alongside a series of different leaves that you can then put it in the leaf, roll it up. It's delicious. And this leaf has a very unique taste to it, and I've never found it anywhere locally. So we're gonna give it a shot, grow it, but I do worry that it's gonna be aggressive. So I'm gonna stick that in a pot. And we'll definitely do a Korean barbecue video with that. Some marinated pork, garlic, kimchi. Other herbs we'll be growing, tarragon, Mexican tarragon, which is different than French tarragon, which will be interesting and a little bit easier to grow, but you still get that same flavor. Parsley, 2 types of basil, a purple basil, Crimson King, and just a large leaf Italian basil. Thyme, rosemary. Other things we're gonna just direct sow into the beds include carrots, onions. We have onion sets that we bought, so they're little tiny bulbs. Lettuce, carrots, sugar snap peas, green beans, and we'll see what else we can fit in. This is our first time growing in this space and in raised beds, so spacing, I think we could pack it in a little closer than usual, but we're just gonna have to kind of see how it goes.
All right, guys, so you got to meet Carly for the first time in almost 4 years, and stay tuned for when we go to fill these giant things up. We still got, like I said, we got 9 more to build, and then we got to fill them up. And before we fill them up, we have a little bit of work to do. Like I said, we got to remove all the sod from the grass here, put some mulch down, and then we have some aggressive things we got to do. We got to cut down a tree so it doesn't fall on our raised garden bed setup.